Hi everyone, Aiden here at eTrailer. Today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Lomax Stance hard tonneau cover on our 2022 Ford Maverick. So this is going to be a hard tonneau cover, which means it's going to offer the best benefit in terms of security. The urethane material gives it a really rugged look and construction on top. It's very similar to a spray-in bed liner. And those hard panels are going to keep things safe inside your tailgate and your bed. When paired with the locking tailgate there, it's going to keep things out of sight and out of mind. And even if someone were to try to break in, there's layers of security there, like that locking tailgate and the hard panels that are going to make it harder to get in, versus something like a soft cover where you could just come up, cut through that material, and get to the inside of the bed a little bit more easily. And when it comes to hard tonneau covers, there's a couple different styles. You can get the canister ones that will roll up into a canister at the front of the bed. You can get the roll-up ones that will roll on top of the bed rails. Or you can get the tri-fold style, which fold in 3 different sections. Now, one area that I really like the tri-fold ones in is going to be the ease of installation. You'll see that later today while we're installing it because it's quick and there's very few adjustments to make. Plus, it's easy to remove. So for the Maverick especially, this is a small bed and you need every bit of space you can get. You can have the tonneau cover a third closed like this, fully closed. There's even a position where you can almost fully open it. There's still gonna be a little bit here. It'll be locked in on the roof, which we'll see later a little bit more closely. But this can get us more access to our bed, but if we need to, we can fully remove this just by undoing 2 bolts at the bottom here, lifting the cover out, and leaving just these side rails behind. So this is gonna be really flexible. It's gonna offer the most options, I think, for the Maverick and be a really good fit. I don't always recommend this style because when it's open like this, it fully blocks the back window. But again, for the Maverick being a smaller truck, having a canister in the bed, those ones are a much more permanent installation. And once you've got it installed, you're probably not taking it out. And having that bed space eaten up all the time, I don't think is worth it. And same for the roll-up style that'll sit above the bed rails. It's gonna block your back window too quite a bit. It's not a big window. So for me, something like this is worth it. If you need to have it open and block the window for a little bit, it's not the nicest thing in the world, but if you know in advance that you need that access, you can remove it pretty easily. And while we have it folded up, let's talk about those roof anchors, because that's probably the thing you're wondering about the most. I know it was something that I was pretty skeptical of because the thought of sticking an anchor point to my roof, this is my personal truck, was a little bit odd at first, but we were able to line it up with these plastic ridges on the roof, so it blends in actually really well. It's pretty low, and it's held in place by 2 layers of adhesive and magnets, and it's on there pretty solid. These spacers or these braces right here are metal, and whenever they come in contact with the magnets in there, it's gonna hold them down and make it pretty hard to lift up. Plus, there's a small lip and they latch in, keeping things pretty solid. There's a little back and forth movement, but the way we set this up, there's no contact with the truck anywhere, and I'm actually very confident in this going down the road. I think it's gonna be really nice to test this long term, but out of the box, after doing the install here, I'm confident with it. If you don't want it blocking your back window though, that's okay. There is another space that we can store this. Just clip those back in, set it down, and it'll click into place right there. And at the front of it, there's gonna be these elastic cords that can hook into these anchors here on both sides. And that's gonna keep things in this basically third of the way closed position. So it does leave a fair amount of space open in the bed. So if you've got something like lumber, ladders, any elongated loads that are partially extending out the tailgate but resting on the tailgate, then you can have it partially closed. And this way it's not gonna be blocking your back window near as much. It certainly sticks up a little bit, but no further than your headrests would. Now, as we get things closed here, I do want to talk about some of the other things I really like about this cover. When it's closed, you'll see it's very low profile. And because of the way this latches in, I can close it with the tailgate still closed. Just make sure you push on here to make sure it actually clicks in and catches. It's a little bit stiff right there, but things will kind of settle in as this stays on the truck. But I like that you can do it with the tailgate closed. So if you get home, you unload your truck and you're ready to close the cover back up, you don't have to lower the tailgate just to operate this thing. You will have to lower it to open it, but that's good. We want that for security purposes. But when you're done and you're ready to close things back up, the process is quick and simple and leaves you with a nice low profile appearance. There's weather sealing all around the cover from the sides to the back to the front. And these are all rubber seals that actually sit on top of the bed rails rather than sometimes jamming them into the side where there's gaps. Now, I don't think anything is waterproof, especially tonneau covers, but of all the ones that I've installed before and seeing how this one sits on the Maverick, I'm actually looking forward to seeing how it performs, and I think it's gonna keep a lot of water out. And this is a clamp-on installation, just clamping to the side of the bed rails, so no drilling required, and it makes it really easy. I know I talked about it earlier that it's a quick install. Of all the tonneau covers I've done, this is probably one of the quickest and easiest. Partially due to the size of it on the Maverick, it's just a little bit smaller and easier to handle, but the actual steps were really straightforward, so we'll walk you through that process now. Now, starting off the installation, you're gonna want to grab your hardware, 4 clamps for each side, and then the side rails for the tonneau cover. The side rails are side specific. There's gonna be one side with a foam seal that'll touch the side of the bed rail, leaving this lowered shelf piece to face towards the inside edge. And then front to back, there's gonna be a small square hole that'll be towards the cab of the truck. And from there, you should be able to figure out which side is which. And it'll sit on the lip of the bed rail, kind of like this. Now, as for the clamps, there are gonna be different orientations we can attach these in. So that clamp is going to have 2 sides to it. We want the nut to be facing towards the inside of the bed so we can actually access it with our 1/2-inch wrench or socket. And it'll clamp onto the bed rails and that tonneau cover rail up top. Now, if you'll notice, this side here is longer on the bottom, shorter on top. And depending on your truck application, you might have to flip it 180 degrees to have it be more flared out on top, or be kind of like this and be a little bit more even on top when it clamps. For our truck today, that's the way we're gonna do this. So to get this all in place, I'm gonna set it up into position, push it as far towards the cab as it'll go, and I'm just going to loosely put one of these clamps in the middle, try to tighten it down. This isn't gonna be its final home. This is just to help me hold it so I can do the rest of the install here. If you've got a friend nearby, you can have them hold on to this while you get the clamps in place. Or if you've got a spring clamp, you can do that too. But right there, it'll at least hold itself most of the way. I'll tighten it down a little bit, just so I can be hands-free here. So we'll be starting as close to the cab as we can go with this clamp. So I'll get it into position by hand, shift it around side to side, and get it as far to the front as I can, making sure that I'm feeling around for any potential obstructions underneath. I want it to get a strong clamp, and right here is feeling like the best spot. So I've got it tightened by hand. I'll come back through with that 1/2-inch wrench and tighten it the rest of the way, applying a bit of downward pressure on the side rail here to make sure that it's sitting as flush as possible. And now I'm just gonna go down the line and repeat that process, making sure that all of the clamps are evenly spaced apart. So I'll go about 1/3 of the way back, 2/3 of the way back, and the final one will be as close to the tailgate as we can get it. This temporary one is pretty close to where I want it to live in its final home, but I am gonna loosen it up so that I can push down and make sure everything's sitting flush how I like it, and shift it to the exact position to match the other side that we already did. When all of the clamps are installed, check to see that this part is level. If it's slanted up or down, you may need to raise or lower the clamps so that when you tighten it, it holds the bracket level, but I'd say we're looking pretty darn good right now. With both side rails installed, you can set the cover in place, making sure that you get the front towards the cab. And that's pretty easy to identify because there's this small flap that's going to be what's at the cab end of the truck. Now, although this is small, it's still pretty weighty, so if you need an extra set of hands, feel free to grab one, but the size does make it a lot easier to deal with. You can just set it down in place, get this lined up, and lay it down. One thing you can watch for is these notches here. Your latch should line up with that on both sides. So you can see whenever we drop it in, how it'll snap in. That lets us know we're lined up. Now these ones on that flap at the front are very similar, but they've got a bolt to tighten down. So pull it open, set it down in there, and you'll probably not be able to see on camera as easily, but once it's under there, we'll just throw the latch, tighten it down just like we did with the clamps, and that'll secure it to the bed. With those tightened down, we can close the cover and check for clearance. Now out of the box, these bungees are going to be secured on both sides, so just be sure to undo those so you can actually unfold it. As we're unfolding it, everything should line up pretty evenly, and at the very end, a very similar snap into position, and we can close the tailgate. Check for clearance, no interference with the tailgate. Everything's getting a nice seal around the edge there. And along the sides, things seem to be running pretty evenly and parallel, so I'd say the installation is pretty good. There is one last step to installing the cover, and that's to get these roof anchors in place. This is what the tonneau cover is going to utilize if you want it in the fully open position where it's sitting more upright. So these have a couple different layers to them. They are magnetic, they do have an adhesive bottom to it, and it also comes with this primer that's going to stick down and just help to adhere this to the roof. Now to do that, we need to make sure that these are in the right position for us. I'm going to open up the cover fully, just using the drawstring at the bottom to fold it upright, and it's going to make contact with our third brake light at the back. That's okay though. It's just plastic, so it's going to be protected, and we can basically find the right positioning for these roof anchors. This piece at the top is going to be the thing that attaches to that hood anchor. So as it stands right now, it's kind of at this angle. I'm going to actually loosen up this Allen key right here so that I can shift it to the side and be a little more in line with this plastic piece on the roof. So I'm going to move that pretty much all the way to the side. Right about there looks good, and I'll retighten it, repeating on both sides. That's going to put us in a much better position to be pulling a little more evenly. And whenever we get this set up, we do want it to be about an inch from the cab of our truck. So as it stands right now, I want to shift it back a little bit. And you want this to be somewhere flat on the roof. So I'm trying to kind of optimize this where it's sitting on a flat spot and give me the proper cab clearance, which right here I'd say it is. If you can see under my arm here, we've got a good amount of room between the third brake light here, and even more room from the paint and the window and everything like that. So here's going to be my spot, and for now I'm just going to get this out of my way. And you can mark this off with some painter's tape or something if you want to. I'm just going to flip it over carefully right now, and the magnet's actually helping it stay. I'm going to clear this area with the included wipe, and then we can add the adhesive down at the bottom after it's been sterilized, peel the backing off, and stick it in place. So we'll just crush it at the black dot right there, and just apply it in the area that it's going to be on both sides. And when that backing is removed, Just flip it over, push it down to make sure that it fully adheres. Now that one side's in, I can do the other side a little bit more easily. This will fully adhere or harden within about 5 minutes or so. There is a curing time beyond that. So after the initial 5 minutes, it'll be good to go, but it'll strengthen over time. Now, while it's open, if we turn our attention down to the bottom, we can do the final step, which is just take these safety latches, and clip them into place on both sides. And that's all there is to it. It's a really solid cover and a really straightforward install, so I really can't ask for much more. I felt like this video is very complimentary of the cover, and partially that's because this is my own truck and this is the cover that I'm going to be using. So I'm very excited about it. But for me, I think that makes me much more critical of it because I'm thinking about how I'm going to be using this in my day-to-day life, and I can actually see myself using this and really enjoying it with the way I use my truck. So as far as the Lomax stance goes, I think it's going to be a really solid fit on the 2022 Ford Maverick. Thanks for watching.